The person of the day is Mary, the mother of Jesus. And let me just ask you, starting off, when you think of Mary, what do you think of? Who was she, and what was she like? Historically, she has been regarded as this symbol of virtue because she was meek, because she was mild, because she was submissive. For 2,000 years, she has been a treasure to the church, and all those dimensions of her personality have been celebrated. But we live in a time now where we want to look more closely and see if there are other things to Mary that we might have missed, especially knowing that submission these days can be not just a virtue, but can actually lead to no end of problems, especially in situations of abuse, domestic violence, where the last thing the church wants to encourage women to be is submissive. Who else is Mary? What more is there to her? More recently, there have been a number of attempts to describe her with some different language, to see other aspects of who she is. In this morning's Advent devotion sent to you in the mail, we included a poem by Denise Levertov called The Annunciation. And she beautifully describes the moment between Gabriel saying, God has chosen you, and Mary saying, here am I, the servant of the Lord. Sometimes we read that section of the Bible, the Annunciation, as if God just said, you're going to do this. You don't have any say. But that Levertov poem is so good at saying between verse 37 and verse 38 is a pause, and all of heaven held its breath, hoping and praying that Mary would say yes. What would she say? You know, we don't know. There may have been other women that Gabriel went to before Mary, and given this prospect of bringing into the world a child who would lead the resistance against the occupation army, who would lead the resistance against the oppressors, who would be out on the front lines, no doubt facing difficulty, challenge, resistance, even suffering, even an early death. Things we heard about in this Samantha Yee poem earlier in the service. There may have been others before Mary who, given that prospect, said, I want my children to have a long life and to grow up and be safe and to not get involved in the messy business of liberation. But it was Mary that Gabriel came to and said, what do you think? God wants you to do this, but you get to choose. And Mary said, here am I, the servant of the Lord. Mary said yes, and as Denise Levertov says in her poem, it's not so much an act of submission or obedience that we're celebrating, it's her courage. That she says, I'm willing to bear a child who may not live a long and full life, but I'm willing to do what God asks of me. Here am I. Mary, mother of Jesus, meek and mild, or a woman of courage and a mother of a revolutionary. Mary receives this visit from Gabriel, and soon after, she packs her bags and goes to visit her cousin Elizabeth. She's filled with good news. As with all of us, when we have good news, we want to share it with others. And so she runs to Elizabeth, and she launches into a song that over time has lovingly come to be known by its first word in Latin, the Magnificat. My soul magnifies the Lord. That song is worth looking closely at. The first half of it is all gratitude, all gratitude. She speaks really for all of us, giving thanks for what God has done. In her lowliness, God has said to her, I choose you. In our lowliness, God says to us the same thing. I choose you. God has looked on us with all our flaws and our failures and our brokenness and didn't move on looking for someone more worthy. In spite of our failings, God has looked at us and said, I choose you. I call you to do noble things in service to my kingdom. That's the first half of Mary's song. It's beautiful, a beautiful reminder of the value of being grateful, taking the time every day to list the blessings that we have received. But the second half of her poem, the second half of her song, let's be honest, Mary gets political. We like to say the Bible isn't political, the church isn't political, Jesus isn't political. It's political. She cries out loudly in this song, saying God will take those people who have been pushed to the side, told they're not welcome, told they're not important, devalued and marginalized, poor and despised, and said God will raise you up. God chooses sides. God chooses to be on the side of those folks. And she sings, God will cast down those who are comfortable, those who are proud, those who ignore the lowly, those who are in charge. She says God's going to turn the world upside down, or maybe, more accurately, God's going to turn the world right side up. It's a revolutionary song. Her song harkens back to her namesake, the woman that she's named after. You know who she's named after? Mary is a variation of the Hebrew name Miriam. Miriam. And you know what the name Mary means? You know what her name means? Her name means rebel, rebellious one, troublemaker. That's who the mother of Jesus is named. And she's named after Miriam, the original troublemaker from 1,500 years earlier. You might remember Miriam is the sister of Moses and Aaron. And throughout her life, she continually stands strong. She's not meek or submissive. She's bold. She's always looking for ways to bring forth God's kingdom more powerfully. And there's this beautiful story late in the Exodus. The slaves are liberated. They're escaped. They've crossed the Red Sea. They're away from Pharaoh. And you know what happens? The men sing a song. The men sing a song. That's sort of like the way to bring this all to a grand conclusion. Miriam surprises everyone by then grabbing a tambourine and all the Hebrew women with her, and they sing a song as they play the tambourine and they dance. They sing what's thought to be the oldest song in the Bible, certainly one of the oldest ones that we have recorded in history. They sing, I will sing to God a song of triumph and of victory. The horse and rider God has thrown into the sea. It's powerful to think about Miriam and all her fellow Hebrew women. Year after year, generation after generation, enslaved, beaten, brutalized, cast down. All the work that falls on the women, the men working as slaves, but the women are doing as much or more, all the cooking, all the caring, all the comforting, all the bearing children, all the raising children, all the burying of their children. And in the midst of it all, along with everything else the Hebrew enslaved women were doing, they did one more thing. You know what it was? They made tambourines. They made tambourines. This instrument, which would be their instrument of joy and dancing and celebrating when God would finally deliver them. I love this. They escaped from Egypt. They took with them unleavened bread. They took what they could grab, and they took their tambourines because they were confident that this God would somehow be with them, somehow accompany them, at some point deliver them. They took their tambourines. Mary, 1,500 years later, lives up to her name. She lives up to this name of being the rebel. She sings this song to Elizabeth, a song we sing today and has been sung for 2,000 years. And my guess is this wasn't the last time she sang this song. My guess is this is the song that became Jesus' favorite lullaby, helped him to know who he was to become. She sings this song as she shares her confidence in God's mercy, God's faithfulness, God's accompaniment, God's deliverance. Mary is bold in singing this song, outspoken, takes on some risk herself just by singing a song that is so outspoken and outrageous. People write about her now in different words. One writer said, as he sees Mary's song, thinks about her, he sees Mary as maybe the original punk rocker, rebellious and defiant. Another says she sees Mary as the original slam poet, casting down these words of defiance and hope in the midst of danger. Can you picture Mary today? In high school, probably a young freshman girl, often overlooked, and the school has an open mic evening, and everybody goes up, does their impressive stuff, and then this little girl that no one expects anything from goes up to the mic and sings or shouts this song of liberation. Mary, mother of Jesus. 2,000 years after Mary, 3,500 years after Miriam, here we are. We're tired. I'm tired, so are you. We are discouraged. We are lonely, and we are grieving a lot of losses, a lot of people that we grieve, but a lot of activities, a lot of our normal life, and we grieve it, we miss it, it's gone, and we don't know if and when it will come back. Mary speaks to us today in our discouragement, and she says to you and to me, keep your tambourine nearby. Keep your tambourine within reach. Keep your dancing shoes there too. And let's sing a song about what God has done so that we are ready to sing a song about what God is doing and what God will do. She invites us to live with incredible hope and incredible confidence that God is here, and that this God who accompanied Miriam and who brought Jesus to life through his mother Mary is here now with as much strength and power as in the days of old. Mary invites us to live with the confidence that God will deliver us from all that oppresses us, our hopelessness and our sadness, our despair, our apathy, our lethargy, our sadness, even our grief. God has come into the midst of those things to bring us deliverance, to bring us hope, to bring us joy. As God is doing that, God also is asking us to do our part in saving humanity. As with Mary, all heaven waits and watches and hopes our answer will be the same as hers. Here am I, the servant of the